Thank you, Angel, and thanks to ILSI for supporting this session and bringing together an excellent group of speakers on very interesting topics. As I said, I'll be talking about new methods for advancing physical activity and food intake, particularly for research and public health purposes. The workshop from which this presentation is drawn was supported by ILSI, and I'm also here at the IUNS conference presenting results from another workshop which was supported by the National Institutes of Health of the United States. As Angel mentioned, I'm the chair of an international network that focuses on physical activity research, surveillance, and policy, and monitoring what's happening in these areas. So as a group, we're very interested in the topic of this presentation because good surveillance and good physical activity research depends on being able to measure physical activity accurately, and the same holds true for obesity prevention work and diet. And I think we're in a very interesting time because not only is research advancing quickly, and you saw in Dr. Boucher's presentation some very nice examples of the rapid advance of technology and the new technologies or approaches that are available to researchers, but many of us have access to similar technology in our everyday lives. Consumer technology for monitoring various things, including physical activity and diet, is also advancing, and at least a subset of the population is extremely interested in this and picking up on this technology. As Heather mentioned in the introduction, this was the topic of the technology summit that was held at UC San Diego with support from ILSI and the American College of Sports Medicine approximately a year ago. And the data and the ideas that I'm presenting are drawn from 3 of the summary papers from that workshop. And you can see that they focused on adults, older adults and children, and first of all, since I know they're going to slides. So I'd like to thank all of those who participated in that conference for providing the content for this presentation. And what I'd like to do is summarize both traditional approaches to measuring diet and physical activity in the field, some of the new approaches, and then some of the benefits and the challenges associated with where we are today in this field. And we have had many good measures for both diet and physical activity. I'll start with diet. And traditionally, we use food records, 24-hour recall, and frequency questionnaires, all of which are based on self-report, and generally investigators going into the field and working with individuals to collect data. There also have been objective measures of at least some dietary components, heavily labeled water, which of course is expensive and requires the appropriate laboratory support, but gives a very accurate assessment of overall energy expenditure. Now, just of course you may raise the question, say, wait a minute, we're talking about dietary measures, so energy expenditure obviously includes both dietary intake and caloric output, but it can be quite useful as part of an overall dietary assessment. As Carol mentioned, blood metabolomics are an increasingly popular way to go here, and have been for some time. And a number of urinary measures have been very useful in research in a variety of areas, particularly looking at protein metabolism, urinary nitrogen, and sodium and potassium. So we've had many tools for working in the field, and some of the challenges obviously in the field work are that we don't have as much control, and it is increasingly more expensive to work with large numbers of people spread out over cities or countries. So the emphasis has been towards the top of this tree towards self-report approaches, such as food records, 24-hour recall, and frequency questionnaire. So where are we headed today? You saw some excellent examples in the earlier presentations, and many of these approaches are based on technologies that travels with the person. So photo-assisted dietary assessment or image-based dietary assessment is a bit different in that it's designed to compare the food before somebody eats it, and then an assessment of what's left on the plate, and then using sophisticated databases, figuring out what was actually consumed and what the dietary components were there. An additional approach, ecological momentary assessment, that was a new term to me, and little did I realize that this is actually an approach that's being used for both diet and physical activity. And some of you may actually recognize the method, even if not the acronym or the full name here. This is an approach to prompting. So it's become much more practical now with smartphone-based technology, because you can program using apps or research-based programs. You can set up a system which will prompt people on either a time basis. Every 15 minutes you ask somebody what they're doing, you ask them to record that, or it can be a little more sophisticated. It can factor in certain situations and prompt the individual in those situations to report either what they're eating or what kind of physical activity they're doing. So this falls into the category that Carol was talking about, of a more active type of automated, technologically based self-report. So it's really enhancing the same approach that we used before, but focusing it more and hopefully gathering better data. Since one of the challenges we've always had with self-report is that regular people don't remember the things that researchers would like them to remember as well as we researchers would like them to remember. And if you prompt people and perhaps have them take a photograph of what it is you prompted them to report, you end up getting much better data. Using modern technology, there are now automated approaches to 24-hour recall and frequency questionnaire. Probably most of the people in this room who are trained in nutrition know more about this than I do, but I think this is an example of taking a tried and true technology and using currently available technology to enhance the ability to collect data. There also are a plethora of other areas, and I think this is one of the most exciting things for research, but probably one of the most challenging things from a public health standpoint, where we hope that the research is synthesized and translated into simpler or more standardized approaches which can be widely applied. So one area which has actually been around for a while, but again with better computing power and better databases becomes more reliable, are UPC or grocery store purchase data. So UPC are the standard codes that are on products. And so this allows assessing everything that's brought into a household. There are other approaches which are assessments of everything that's in the kitchen. So now we're in some ways we're updating the traditional food disappearance approach, which is really more at a macro level, applying at an individual level. What are all the things that a person or a family purchases? What are all the things that are in the household? And whatever you don't find at the end of that time is presumably consumed by that group of people. And so this can be very powerful for tracking particular types of food or nutrients, and this objective data gets us around issues of self-report. There are many body-worn monitors being tested, and obviously at the top of that list are the camera approaches, and we saw some very nice examples of these earlier, but there are many others. So there are researchers who are monitoring chewing and swallowing, and looking at speed of eating, and a whole variety of factors. And I think where we are clearly headed is measuring many of these things and over time figuring out which of them can be put together in a measurement system that gives us the best information in the most practical way. Clearly, the more things you measure, the more complexity, potentially introduce more variability, but you also introduce challenges for data synthesis and interpretation. So I think one slide hardly does justice to the vast amount of innovation that's going on in assessment of diet in this area. I think this probably should not be surprising given the technological tools and computing power that's available now. We have an extremely complex multifactorial behavior diet, and now we have tools which allow us to get at this in a wide variety of ways. Okay, so we'll switch now to measures of physical activity. Physical activity is also a complex behavior, although I think most people would agree it's probably a bit less complex than dietary intake. And traditionally, in field research for physical activity, we have relied on questionnaires, and there are hundreds upon hundreds of questionnaires, and there's been much work done on standardizing them. Angel referred to my work with IPAC a number of years ago. That was actually a subcomponent of physical activity questionnaire work with international surveillance, and at the time we looked across countries in Europe, and across 33 countries there were 32 different questionnaires being used to measure physical activity. And of course it's rather difficult to make comparisons across countries if everybody measures the same thing differently. So the goal was to come up with a short, valid, reliable questionnaire which everyone could use the same way. Turns out it's a little more complicated than that, but for example, issues such as translation of a questionnaire introduce a substantial degree of complexity in different populations interpreted. However, so these are well-known issues with self-report and they're across all issues with self-report. But questionnaires, nonetheless, have been very useful because they do a pretty good job of categorizing people into basic groups. And questionnaire reports on physical activity are really the basis for the current public health recommendations because they've done a pretty good job of identifying people who are less active and at higher risk of chronic diseases, people who get some activity and are at intermediate risk, people who get enough activity and are at notably reduced risk. So they've been good for dividing populations crudely into groups. Much less good at looking at changes of physical activity in populations, for example, in intervention studies, and not so good at looking at multiple correlations across various factors that might be associated with people being more or less active because of the high variability of questionnaires. So, and questionnaires give you one point in time. The second approach is to use diaries and logs. And a short story on this one, diaries and logs, much as nutrition, impose a high responder curve. You would like somebody to record what they're doing, for example, every 15 minutes over the course of the day. And as you might expect, very few people are meticulous enough to be constantly stopping, especially in the old days when this was all done on paper and pencil. And actually, when I started graduate school for my master's degree in public health, a colleague who's been a colleague over the entire time since then offered me the chance to code and score the physical activity logs that they had collected on people a couple of years before. They had not yet been able to find a grad student who would sit down and plow their way through all of those logs and put them into a format that needed to be analyzed. And I had to turn down that opportunity. Luckily, that didn't compromise the framework. And so that's really a challenge. That's why these have not been widely used in physical activity, is because in the old days of paper and pencil and data entry, it was just too much work to code and score data that didn't have a high probability of being extremely accurate. And this is now changing because of things like the new technology. Direct observation has been a very useful approach to physical activity. This was really the brainchild of Thomas Henze, and there are a variety of different protocols, but these essentially involve monitoring physical activity in an enclosed, a limited space, a defined space, using repeated measures which are scored by somebody who is there watching and using a standard protocol. And so for things like physical education classes or physical activity in parks, where all the activity takes place in a defined space in limited amounts of time, these are extremely useful and there's a good body of literature on them. Some time ago, step counters came into vogue for physical activity, so a first objective measure, and those were soon followed with more sophisticated measures, accelerometers, which measures not just steps, but actually measure acceleration and movement, and initially in one plane, and more recent devices in 3 planes. And heart rate monitors were very popular for a while. They tended to be replaced in most research by accelerometers. They're now coming back into vogue in combination devices because they give additional information. And doubly labeled water, obviously because it is the most accurate way of assessing total energy expenditure in the field, has been used in physical activity research as well as activities. So what's happened with new and emerging technologies in this area? Much as in diet, there's been an explosion of innovation in thinking about how we can use new technologies to better capture a complex behavior out in the real world. And so far in research settings, I think much of this has focused on the device that's been in use for a couple decades, the accelerometer. And accelerometers have gotten better. The traditional limitation of accelerometers has been that they haven't been worn for 24 hours, so they have to be placed on somebody, generally worn on the hip, and since they couldn't survive getting wet, they had to be taken off for showers, swimming, etc. And the protocols normally were to have them to have daily wear time. And as anybody who's worked in the field knows, if you're asking your subjects to take something off and then put it back on again when they wake up the next morning, there's a chance that they forget that. And so this has really been a significant limitation. And for example, the scoring protocols for accelerometry for a week wear are typically 4 days of wear, maybe 3 days during the week and 1 on the weekend, and at least 10 hours a day. Your mathematical skills don't have to be particularly strong to realize that that's only a relatively modest sample of the total hours during the week. Newer devices can hold up the water, and there has been much work on thinking about alternate places for them to be placed in the body. And so in some recent studies, accelerometers have been placed on the wrist, so less intrusive, and they can be worn for 24 hours. So while there are some challenges in interpreting that data, you can see that from a subject bird, this is much easier. It's like wearing a watch. You put it on, it stays on your wrist for 7 days, and then the investigators take it off, and because of increased processor power and better battery life, it can collect all of that data over that whole time. So accelerometers are being worn in different locations on the body. There are now accelerometers that measure inclination, so they can make a key differentiation between lying down and sitting when people are inactive, and they have become relatively useful for sleep study as well as studies of physical activity and sedentary time. Probably as much as the new devices, there's been innovation in what to do with that data. And not surprisingly, with all microprocessors, the power has gotten much better, and A decade ago, people were collecting accelerometer data once per minute and on one axis, and now they're typically collecting it once per second on 3 axes. So that's 180 times more data to deal with. And if you collect that on a lot of people, that's a massive amount of data. One of the biggest limitations with accelerometry, well, it's very accurate in assessing the amount of amount of movement that people do. It hasn't provided information on what they're doing, so it hasn't been good for differentiating, for example, walking from running and playing on a playground for kids. And however, researchers who focus on machine learning and pattern recognition have jumped into this game. And again, machine learning is important in developing more complex algorithms for interpreting dietary data. It's become very important in physical activity because, in fact, if you collect data on 3 axes every second, not surprisingly, most activities have a pattern. And with machine learning, you can develop algorithms which identify those patterns. And as people get better at this, we may be able to get much richer information from accelerometry than crude amounts of movement. And this is work in progress, but there's been a fair amount of progress. GPS is being widely used now. This lets you know whether people are in parks or at home or in the streets. It's useful information. And with ever more precise GPS, you literally can track how people are moving, how fast they're going. You have some challenges of wondering whether they're on a bicycle or a car and so forth. But again, with machine learning algorithms, each of these patterns are distinctive. And so there's enormous potential here. It makes a lot of sense if all these devices are getting smaller, cheaper, and have better battery power, you package as many of them as you can, all in one little package, and affix it to somebody. You collect all of this information: accelerometry, GPS, heart rate, sweat sensors, anything else that you can think of that you can measure. And there's much work in this. This is a diet prompting, ecological momentary assessment is quite useful. And again, this is putting a new spin on diaries and logs because it's possible to fine-tune that approach and make it more likely that people actually report what they're doing and perhaps take photographs of where they are and what they're doing on a regular basis. Wearable cameras have been used a little bit in physical activity research, much less so than for diet. One of the most interesting and challenging areas, and this was a focus of much of the work in the workshop a year ago, are consumer fitness wearables. And so Fitbit, Jawbone, Apple, many groups out there developing devices which are increasingly becoming competitors to the research accelerometers. All of these devices have an accelerometer, many have other assessment technology within them, and the quality of these devices is actually quite good. The handful of validation studies that have been done comparing, for example, Fitbit with accelerometry show that they're pretty good and they're getting better. Probably the biggest issue is that the software is proprietary, and so it's a little hard to figure out what's going on and to analyze this data. So, is that research-grade information? Probably not, but is it available on a massive number of people, and could we potentially make use of it for research? Well, perhaps we could, and I'll get to an example of that. So, I'd like to summarize some of the advantages of the new technology. I mentioned a few of these along the way. Clearly, this is getting us to a point where we can have reduced reliance on self-report. We have used self-report for both diet and physical activity, and much of what we know today in the science in these areas is based on that. So we shouldn't discount the value of self-report. On the other hand, we know that it's fraught with a number of problems, And better technology either to enhance self-report or replace it is a big advance. Much reduced subject burden. And so Carol mentioned a number of passive approaches to assessing diet, and accelerometers are a classic passive approach to assessing physical activity. Once you get the device on somebody, that's it. It takes care of itself. Greater objectivity. This is a bit of a two-edged sword. We may get less contextual data than if we ask people, but we get very objective measures of movement or photographs of food, for example. This clearly gives us the potential to collect a lot more data than we used to be able to collect. And researchers, epidemiologists especially, love data. We like massive amounts of data, and then we figure out what to do with it. And so there's the potential to collect and analyze a lot of detailed data and get into areas that we previously could only dream about. And I'd say that early studies of reliability and validity of these new technologies are generally quite good. So this is really good information to have. So what are some of the challenges? The first one is the flip side of the benefit of that massive data. It's analyzing and making sense of massive amounts of detailed data. And this is generally more difficult than collecting it. As has been previously mentioned, some of these technologies are quite intrusive, and they introduce ethical issues that are being wrestled with by researchers around the world. The rapid pace of technological change is, as I had mentioned previously, a big challenge because while we want consistency in most research settings, we also want to use the best available technology. And we are now constantly having to decide whether we switch out for new and better approaches to measure, or new and better analytic algorithms, or whether we stick with the current ones, which allows us better comparability. I've already mentioned the blurring of the line between consumer and research technology, and this is a huge challenge. And finally, and I'll provide an example of this, is perhaps we can get over this, if we can get over some of these challenges with consumer technology, if we can develop study designs and sampling frames that are appropriate for the quantities of data coming in and the ways that it's coming in. And we may really have to rethink what a representative sample is and whether there are ways of dealing with what in essence are large convenient samples to make them useful for science. And I show this, I don't know, this is a study that was published by a group at Stanford in Nature earlier this year, and large-scale physical activity data reveals worldwide activity inequality and association with obesity. And how did they collect this data? With smartphones, smartphone apps. They collected data on more than 700,000 people from 111 countries, and they looked at how many steps it took. So, can you imagine the cost of collecting this data as a researcher? 700,000 people in 100 countries. It's totally impossible. They published it in Nature, so they must have been doing something right. But critics can also, and this is a very interesting look at physical activity across many countries and many different people, 700,000 people. On the other hand, there's nothing representative about these groups of people, and we really don't know where they were holding their smartphone, how much difference that makes in the activity counts, and so forth. So I think this is a perfect example of the power of technology to allow us to look at things in a new way, and potentially very valuable way, but also it introduces a lot of challenges to us as scientists to how we interpret it correctly. So some crucial next steps. I think we need some consensus on how to deal with these problems, establishing reliability and validity for new measures. This may be advanced by some sort of international working groups to work on standardization. There's continued development of these biomarkers, which can be used in the field and which can further enhance sort of this multiple data collection. And I think better bridging between consumer and research technology. I know some final key points here. I think these new technologies are really changing the way we distinguish between public or population health and individual or clinical medicine, because we now have technology that allows us to do things that we used to think of as one-on-one work with massive numbers of people at the same time. And I think at the same time, the distinction between assessment, collect that data, bring it home, carefully analyze, work through it, develop an intervention, take it back out, give it to those same people, is disappearing because that data can be collected and can give feedback to individuals instantly. And so assessment and intervention are coming very close together. And this is really leads to the third point, is we used to have a lot of control over this. Now our subjects have almost equal access to tools and feedback as we as researchers do. So I think the last point is a positive aspect. In a challenging world, we're seeing that the digital divide, this access to technology only for rich people or rich countries, is going away because one of the most powerful technologies, smartphone-based technology, is really widespread. And in some instances, pickup is better in low-income groups than in low-income countries. So there is a democratization of this technology, and I think that's good news as well. So thanks very much for